Folks, what is up? It is your boy DJ L7, and I am very, very excited today to bring in a very key strategic ally and someone who himself has a very, um, you know, interesting tale to tell, and he's going to be involved with as a partner in terms of actions. But let's just meet him for himself. Yeah, let's meet him in his own words. Go ahead, brother. Introduce yourself.
My name is Muti Ajamu-Osagboro. I was born and raised. I'm from the great state of North Philadelphia, city of Richard Allen. I know you don't often hear it like that, but that's exactly what it is. We say death to gentrification. That's why we say the great state of North Philadelphia, city of Richard Allen. The state of North Philadelphia is made up of many different cities, and they will remain if we have anything to say about it. Um, I'm fresh out the box. Yesterday was my 30-day anniversary after being released, fighting to be exonerated based on the evidence of actual innocence. Over 42 years of imprisonment, false imprisonment, illegal imprisonment.
Okay, so now that you're out, you have actually a desire to improve society, help build community, things like that. Um, Tell me about some of your decision to, get involved with that particular. Was it before you went in? Was it something you came to, in terms of improving society? Because you went in as a kid, I believe, right? How old?
Child,
Yeah, how old were you when you went in?
17.
And so that, were you really community minded at that time, even, or did those going through that experience, was that what radicalized you? What happened?
Well, I was actually, ironically, a child advocate as a child before I went to prison. I come up under the leadership of the Honorable Sister Nadia Williams, and she taught me everything I know about organizing African people politically, economically, and socially, and culturally as well. Most people know her from the Million Woman March fame, in which she had to wear several hats in order to make it happen. Where Sister Chile Fanosi was the one who got the vision to actually call it into existence, but Sister Nadia Williams actually had to wear multiple hats actually to bring it into fruition. So I come up under her leadership, and she taught me how to organize, how to protest, how to problem solve, how to love African people, how to love all people for that matter. Um, and so that's my pedigree. And other sisters came along that taught me as well. I first worked at the Richard Allen Tenant Council when she was the president. And we had the treasurer, Miss Butchie, um, Miss Margaret, and I can't remember the other sister's name, but it was the president, treasurer, vice president, and etc. Sister Nadia was so successful that she actually got me and my little crew to volunteer, where the females our age were actually being paid as a summer job. We actually volunteered, and I loved it. And basically, that was my prelude into human rights activism.
Okay, so human rights, there's a lot of different, flavors, I guess you could say, of activism. Some people are doing, human rights. Some people are doing, labor stuff, right? Some people are doing, animal stuff. There's all kinds of like different, flavors of activism. Um, what uh, what do you think is really your focus? You said like human rights. What is that really? That's kind of like a broad category, right? There's international human rights, domestic human rights. What's your maybe universal human rights? What are your philosophies regarding that?
I like that question. That's a good question. Because some people distinguish, some people even call human rights things that are not human rights. Trying to fit everything under, trying to basically force it in. So that's good. When I say human rights, I mean coming from the spirit of Malcolm X, where he talked about having the right to live in this society, have fresh water, the basic things: food, clothing, shelter, um, water, land, um, healthcare, and ways and means to sustain all of the above. And that encompasses a whole plethora of things that are often not dealt with. We, like I explained to you before in an earlier interview, um, we coined the phrase and the concept of human rights merger, where we merge different genres of injustice um, in order to create a bigger umbrella. Um, Urban agriculture, environmentalism, court restorative justice with a special focus on vindicating the rights of children, particularly child deafers, that is, children who have been sentenced to death by incarceration, who have the evidence to prove it, but still nonetheless are fighting to to prove and exonerate themselves.
All right. So unfortunately, you were put away for 40 plus years. That's a significant chunk of your life. Now you're trying to move on from that. But let's talk about. I believe that you're challenging and fighting for exoneration. You're supported, I believe, by Vincent Moto. I met him. He's a historical exoneree, who actually we met each other at his anniversary recently. He was talking about he was freed on DNA evidence. What's the what happened in your case?
Well, first of all, big up to my man Quasimodo, super producer. We met when I was in one of those neo concentration camps, Camp Grady Ford. And as you pointed out, he's a historical first exoneree in the state of Pennsylvania by DNA. He was falsely accused of and convicted of raping a woman that DNA proved that never happened. Um, and well, let me say this: that if it did happen, he wasn't the culprit. Put it that way, because I don't want to deny if the sister actually was raped. I don't want to deny that, but we know
Wasn't him?
unequivocally,
Yeah.
factually, and evidentially that it wasn't Quasimodo. Um, so yeah, big up to Quasimodo. And yeah, like you said, he came to the event. He and I go to a lot of events. He's created an organization. Him and Dr. Chinchilla. She's created organizations as well, and the organizations that I've created, we come together to make it happen. In my personal case, um, there are many things, but to simplify it, it was a matter of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And a few of my childhood friends and a few associates, I wound up getting caught in the mix with them. And one of them, in order to save himself, um, actually falsely implicated me in order to take what he viewed at that time as a noose around his neck. Now, I don't begrudge him that, because we were all children, and most of the times when the coercive power of the state is bearing down on the individual, some people can't take it. And when you talk about children, most of the times, as the United States Supreme Court has pointed out in the case of JDB versus North Carolina, children are more apt to plead guilty to crimes that they did not commit because of the overwhelming power of the state. So I don't begrudge him that. I don't hold that against him. I don't have any animosity towards him. If I had any animosity, it would be towards the system, not necessarily individuals, but to injustice, degradation, humiliation, and hardcore, unapologetic white supremacy.
And you never actually, you know, confessed or did any, you always asserted your innocence in your case.
That's correct.
Yeah, and the
That's
thing is
correct.
that in order to get your parole, right, they try to pressure you to admit to the crime and show,
That,
and they
that's
say we're
correct.
not going to free you unless you do this, and they hold
Correct.
it over you. So that's a crazy thing to think about. But you held your ground. You said, you know what, I'm right. I've done all this time, 40 plus years. I'm still going to stand my ground. That's how right this is. That needs to be respected.
That's
And
correct. Let
yeah,
me say this.
people don't
Let me
know. Yeah,
say this.
go ahead.
This is very important. Everything you just said is correct. However, what we managed to do because of the struggle, because of networking with various entities, we managed to get a series of professors to come aboard, and those professors, one in particular, Professor Daniel Medved, he wrote a study called, don't quote me on this, I'm paraphrasing. He wrote a study called Barred: Why the Innocent Can't Get Out of Jail. It's very comprehensive and it's powerful. It's an indictment of various parole boards and other entities underneath the jurisdiction of the American court system, and it's excellent. So he wrote a letter of support, and we submitted also that study, and as you well know, as I pointed out to you, your listeners may not know, I was also assisted by Georgetown Law School, a program there called METI, Making of Exoneree. Big up to Professor Mark Howard. Big up to Professor Marty Tankliff. Um, and they came aboard. And once they started coming aboard, they got Princeton to come aboard out of Princeton, New Jersey. Big up to Professor James Vielander. Um, Correct me if forgive me if I brutalized his last name. But they came aboard and they started shaking shit up. We had letters from all over the world calling for my immediate release based on the evidence of actual innocence. Grassroots organizations, high level organizations, and very prominent people throughout the country and throughout the world calling for my release. So when Georgetown and Princeton came along, bam, that just pushed it, accelerated the whole process. Prior to us coming on the air, you was looking for something, and you mentioned my nephew. He was a part of that, Siggy J. He may he forever rise in power. He's no longer with us, but he came aboard at the right time, and he pushed the program. He took it to social media, and he elevated the struggle because we basically was going door to door like a political campaign. You know what I'm saying? And he took it global by going media.
That's great, man. I'm glad it worked out, man. It's always nice to be effective, right? So, all right. So, what's the next? Well, just coming out. I know it's tough. So much is coming at you at once. I know you're trying to get acclimated to the technology and all this crazy thing, but it was also crazy to be at that event and hear Vincent talk about how it's been 27 years and he's gotten no compensation for the wrong that was done to him. People want to talk about reparations. This is much more immediate. He should be made whole immediately. Now, one thing that he advocated for, right, once again, I do like the fact that you're always very solutions-based. He talked about legislation in Texas and how it's actually very good for exonerees as in terms of a fair compensation package and, or kind of cutting edge. And hopefully we could get national implementation of that and also, push your case and get you, I think you could be a pioneer case for, asking for compensation. You were probably in for one of the longest, right? How many other people are you the longest one? Longest incarceration? One of the longest.
Let me be clear first and foremost. I haven't yet to be exonerated. That's number one. But that's the goal, to be exonerated. However, in terms of those who have served, who assert their actual innocence, I'm definitely the longest served, tenure-wise. And that's really not anything to brag about. It's just a fact. It's just a fact of reality. Where we've been pushing on compensation for those who have been exonerated, we've been pushing for that maybe over 35 years. We were pushing when I was behind that double military razor wire fence and that 40-foot stone wall. We were advocating for that. And one of the things that we did was the chairman of the state judiciary was Senator Stuart Greenleaf, and I established a rapport with Senator Greenleaf, and we corresponded back and forth. And many of the requests that I made, he granted. One of which was to hold a public hearing specifically on the actual innocence. Another request I made was for him to go to the state of Texas and visit and see what they were doing with exonerations, because many people didn't know that the state of Texas leads the country in exonerations. And so Senator Greenleaf took me on that. First, he had the public hearing, and then he commissioned a study, innocence study, for them to study the issue of illegal convictions. And the result of that report was explosive. You can read it for yourself. You can go online and get a copy of that. But then he went, as I suggested, to go to Texas and see what they were doing in the state of Texas. And he came back. He was so blown away. He said, what they doing in Texas is beautiful. He said, and I'm convinced of what I know about the state of Pennsylvania, we have far more innocent people in our prisons than they do in the state of Texas. So that was powerful. And he's no soft liberal flower. He's a conservative. And for many years, he advocated for more strenuous laws. Some say more harsher and uncruel and unjust laws. Uh, I sort of side on the latter because many of the laws that he backed were unjust and even cruel, particularly as it relates to the changing of PCRA. But that's another issue for another time that we'll go into. However, those are some of the things that we were doing to advocate for not only the actual innocence, but for the actual innocent to become compensated. Because that's another thing that we brought to his attention. Yo, they need to be paid like they paid everywhere else. And we showed the examples of other states and jurisdictions like District of Columbia, who also provide compensation for those once they are lawfully exonerated.
Okay. Also, just wanted to ask at your presentation, one thing that I remember that jumped out at me was I think that you did time with Mumia Abu Jamal at one point. Did you ever get to cross paths with Mumia?
Well, actually, I know Mumia personally. We grew up in the same proximity. Though Mumia is a little older than my older brother. My older brother is 11 years older than me. He and Mumia went to Benjamin Franklin together. My brother was like a senior or a junior. Mumia was like a freshman. And at that time, they tried to change the name of Benjamin Franklin to Malcolm X High. And both of them got suspended. Mumia got expelled. My brother, the only way my brother, so the story I'm told, got back in is because my mother knew some white folks downtown, and she went and basically begged for them to keep her son in school. That's the way I get the story as it relates to my brother. Now, I don't know if that's an apocryphy or what, but that's the way I was told the story. But yeah, I know Mumia personally. But in terms of us being physically in prison in the same neo concentration death camps at the same time, I don't think that I know of happened, unless, of course, he was in solitary and I didn't know he was in solitary because I've been to multiple of these neo concentration death camps. One of the things that when you engage in human rights activism and exposing the systemic white supremacy and injustice that it brings with it inherently, they move you around. They try to break your spirit. They move you from camp to camp. In the same way Africans were enslaved in America and you was unruly on one plantation, you refused to cooperate and you wanted to be free. You said that it was a God-given right that you be free. They would punish you by saying, "How dare you? We shipping you off somewhere else. We're selling you. We will break up the family unit and sell you somewhere because you won't comply with our desire to enslave you. You talking this nonsense about freedom, so we're not having that. Only people that deserve to be free is white people, and specific type of white people, wealthy white people, and white people who have land. But everybody else either is to be enslaved or what they refer to as indentured servitude, which is another form of enslavement. But basically, Mumia and I never um, crossed paths in prison, but like I said, in the street we crossed paths many times. Many times before he did his commentary on air, he would come through our neighborhood and basically tell us about the different stories percolating, the stories he was working on. He's the first person that put us down with MOVE. We didn't know anything about the radical organization or revolutionary radical organization called MOVE, but Mumia told us about that. Mumia is the one that had us going down the court and watching the magic that MOVE does in the courtroom by disrupting the process of legalized lynching.
That's wild, man. Yeah, I did not know that that your story went that deep, man. That's crazy. All right. I mean, it's already a deep story just being in 42 years, but and also being an activist and all this, right?
One
So,
other point
yeah.
that you just pointed out, this is of note. I said this a few times, but folks didn't understand. I was in prison as a child before Mumia was. I literally have more time in prison than Mumia does. Mumia won't have 42 years in until December. I got 42 plus. I had 42 plus in. I literally watched him. Oh, you know what? Correction. We did cross paths. Because I thought you was talking about upstate. We was in the county together at Holmesburg Prison on J Block together. So that's where we met. And I watched him come to prison. I actually had almost a year in by the time he was captured and falsely arrested and convicted.
Wild, man. Yeah. So we need to get justice for all the brothers that's locked up right now, you know. And thanks for
Sisters too. Don't leave your sisters out.
yeah, ladies as well.
Because
Yeah.
because anything you think about what's done to me or any of the other brothers, the boy children or the males or the men, multiply that by 10 and you have what they're dealing with the girl children and the women. Multiply it by 10. And that's one of the things that I'm really campaigning for viciously is the advocacy of the girl child and women, particularly women of color.
Yeah. Uh, there's definitely victims in that category as well. We shouldn't leave anybody out. We shouldn't leave anybody behind, right? Yeah, every person matters. That's a fact. So, what's the plan for you to mobilize? Right now, you're reaching out to get change, get justice for yourself. You see Vincent Motor 27 years later, he's still fighting for compensation. What is what's your plan, right? You're right back. You're trying to get a job now, or you're trying to. They making opportunities available for you. I mean, the
Yeah,
Georgetown
well,
people sound
I have
connected.
I have quite a few prospects in terms of employment, but ultimately I'm going to be self-employed. I have businesses. We have to just get them off the ground and grow. But in the meantime, between time, I'll take employment from various individuals and entities that have offered the jobs. We'll see if they're sincere about the offers that they've made, and if they are, we'll pursue those things. Some very prominent people in society have stepped forward, but like I said, we'll see. In terms of compensation, we're still pushing that movement rock of to have those compensated. I brought to the table, I like to think, a different approach. There's a bill um, under advisement, not necessarily under advisement, that's being pushed through the House and the Senate that will provide actual compensation. And I shared with others approach that I think we need to take, one that will expedite the actual passing of that bill. And if we apply that strategy, I think we will be successful.
Okay,
But the thing is,
I have a quick question for you. Now, I know another part of your activism is also working in the environmental field. Am I correct?
yes,
So
yeah.
how is it, right? Like some of the human rights stuff, how successful is it in terms of bringing the environmental people over and being a part of the human rights movement and combining forces to really actually achieve the change that you guys need and the attention versus what the media narrative is? How successful is it to really how much solidarity as partners are they really giving back for your
Well, that's a good
priorities?
question. That's a
Go
good
ahead.
question.
Yeah.
Um, it all starts with a conversation. I mean, just like me and you met at an event, bam, we start. Listen, this is what we're going to do. It's a conversation, and it's a dialogue. And as you begin the dialogue, what I try to point out to everyone is that most of these areas of injustice, the thing that you'll find that's common, there's a common thread of oppression. And that common thread seems to wrap all of that in, tie it all in. And but it also functions like in the spirit of Willie Lynch, they have us operating in silos where we think it's just us. And I'm saying that no, it's all of us. And the more of us come together and start talking about some of the injustices that we've been battling since time immemorial, then we can get together and solve not just our quote unquote personal problems, but also the problems of others who are similarly situated or not similarly situated. They just it's a human condition thing. And so when we begin to have that conversation, that's how it is springboard. Um, Environmentalism, for those of us who don't know very much about it, we simply talking about people being able to live in an area that's not polluted, the water is not polluted, the air is not polluted, and the soil is not polluted. Many of these multinational corporations are doing just that, polluting the air, polluting the water, and polluting the soil so that you can't even grow nothing in it, food that we need to use as sustenance to sustain ourselves. And that has to come with education. Once we know what's going on, then we can teach it to others. Then we can report it to the masses to let them know what to support, what not to support, what they putting in their bodies that can harm them, and what what the role of the corporations are who are involved in those things. Who, for many of the corporations, their bottom line is the almighty dollar, or what they call the almighty dollar, and they don't care how many people they hurt, millions of people who they make sick. They destroy the lives of people's uh, capability to reproduce children, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, just like with any other genre of injustice, the conversation, the process of unifying with them starts with a conversation.
Okay. So let's start the conversation with my audience right now. Most people that are watching are people that are politically minded. I have the most candidate interviews in the 22 election cycle. I talked to a lot of candidates. I just had a interview with some of them. I also talk to people that are also activists like myself that are looking for change. What could you actually, what are you looking for from other organizations to work with you on?
In a general sense,
And how can they
as
help
long
you?
as
Yeah, go ahead.
in a general sense, as long as they are authentically concerned about addressing the miserable condition of the masses of people, not just in this country, but all over the world, as long as they're genuinely concerned, as long as they are moving in that direction, then we can build. We can build something beautiful. But it has to be genuine, and I say genuine because we have to be critical of one another. When we come together, we have to ask informed questions. We have to ask hard questions. Meeting today at 10 a.m., 10:45. I don't know. I did. Okay. All right. Got you. Yeah, that's correct. Oh, shit. Okay. All right. Well, we got time. We got time. All right. No, somebody just sent me something. Where was I? Where was I, Elder?
You was talking about you willing to build with people that is honest.
Oh, correct. And they have an authentic desire to solve problems. And oftentimes, where we start from what you did yesterday. What were you doing yesterday? And we look at what they did in the past, which is very important. But we don't convict them on their past, but we understand and we want to know also what they are doing right now. And for us, that's a good indication of where they are because we don't want nobody who's been working against the benefits of the masses their entire lives, and then all of a sudden they meet us and they have this epiphany where they want to do right. Because a lot of times, and we're not saying nobody can't have a transformation because everybody can have a transformation, but we saying that we have to be critical of that. So to interrogate that to find out if they trying to buy us or actually work with us and help us. And once we have that critical interrogation, we'll be able to determine whether or not they really want to do what they say or be about what we're about.
Yeah, every new batch of leaders has different decisions to make. So we'll have to see how it moves
Indeed.
forward. Yeah.
Indeed.
All right, cool, man. So how can people contact you? Do you have any particular or social
Yeah,
media? Do you have any? Yeah.
well, I mean, I'm on the gram, I'm on Instagram, and I'm on Facebook. On Facebook, I'm the real Ajamu-Osagboro, and on Instagram, it's the same, the real Ajamu-Osagboro. And that's the real Ajamu-Osagboro. Ajamu-Osagboro is spelled AJAMU, capital Osagboro. You don't have to write capital. I always say capital because it's actually my name. And so I'm used to spelling my name, and that's what I always say. But you don't have to write capital or say capital. Actually, my last name is hyphenated. And I'm so used to spelling my name and then saying hyphen capital Osagboro. But it's sort of like a force of habit. And remind you, I'm only 31 days out the box. So a lot of the vestiges of, what I did in that behind that double razor wire military fence, 40-foot stone wall, some of those things, the verbiage and other things, I still do. Some of it's good for the other side of the fence, some of it's not so good. So I'm still parsing what I can get rid of and what I need to keep, what is helpful.
All right.
So, but yeah, You can hit me up at the Real Ajamu-Osagboro on Facebook and Instagram. I tend to be on all. I'm going to eventually be on TikTok, Snapchat, you name it. I'm going to be on it because it's a tool and it's a platform to connect with people globally, connect with the global struggle. You know, and you can hit me up. My email address is ahuru.sasa.23 at gmail.com. Uhuru is UHURU .sasa.23 at gmail.com. And for any people who wonder, Uhuru Sasa means freedom now. And 23 is the day that I was discharged from prison.
I just want to comment also the fact is that coming from Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania is a swing state, and as in terms of electoral, there's certain states that are just they call them swing states. Sometimes they call them purple states, states that could go Democrat or Republican, and as in terms of their choices, they can have a very real impact on national policy. So, a very strategic partner, very valuable partner, and I appreciate you coming on the show. I look forward to doing more future work with you. I just wanted to do a quick intro of my audience to your work and what you're working on, and start the conversation, as you like to say. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. First and foremost, I'm honored to be on your show. I'm honored to have met you yesterday at the event. I think that you and I can do something beautiful. I have a global network, and I want to introduce you to that global network. And I think you and I are getting together. We're going to shake some shit up. For sure, for sure.
I love it, man. I love it. All right, so I'm going to stop the stream right here. Give me a second. Okay.